Zapfa's answer: most people learn to save themselves by artificially limiting the content of consciousness. From an evolutionary viewpoint, in Zapfa's observation, consciousness was a blunder that required corrections for its effects. It was an adventitious outgrowth that made us into a race of contradictory beings, uncanny things that have nothing to do with the rest of creation. Because of consciousness, parent of all horrors, we become susceptible to thoughts that were startling and dreadful to us, thoughts that have never been equitably balanced by those that are collected and reassuring. Our minds now began dredging up horrors, flagrantly joyless possibilities, enough of them to make us drop to the ground, and paroxysms of self-soiling consternation should they go untrammeled. This potentiality necessitated that certain defense mechanisms be put to use to keep us balanced on the knife edge of vitality as a species. While a modicum of consciousness may have had survivalist properties during an immemorial chapter of our evolution, so one theory goes, this faculty soon enough became a seditious agent working against us. As Zapfa concluded, we need to hamper our consciousness for all we are worth, or it will impose upon us a too clear vision of what we do not want to see, which, as the Norwegian philosopher saw it, along with every other pessimist, is the brotherhood of suffering between everything alive. Whether or not one agrees that there is a brotherhood of suffering between everything alive, we can all agree that human beings are the only organisms that can have such a conception of existence, or any conception, period. That we can conceive of the phenomenon of suffering, our own as well as that of other organisms, is a property unique to us as a dangerously conscious species. We know there is suffering, and we do take action against it, which includes downplaying it by artificially limiting the content of consciousness. Between taking action against and downplaying suffering, mainly the latter, most of us do not worry that it has overly sullied our existence. As a fact, we cannot give suffering precedence in either our individual or collective lives. We have to get on with things, and those who give precedence to suffering will be left behind. They fetter us with their sniveling. We have some place to go and must believe we can get there, wherever that may be. And to conceive that there is a brotherhood of suffering between everything alive would disable us from getting anywhere. We are preoccupied with a good life, and step by step are working toward a better life. What we do as a conscious species is set markers for ourselves. Once we reach one marker, we advance to the next, as if we were playing a board game we think will never end, despite the fact that it will, like it or not. And if you are too conscious of not liking it, then you may conceive of yourself as a biological paradox that cannot live with its consciousness and cannot live without it. And in so living and not living, you take your place with the undead and the human puppet. Undoing 1. For the rest of the Earth's organisms, existence is relatively uncomplicated. Their lives are about 3 things: survival, reproduction, death, and nothing else. But we know too much to content ourselves with surviving, reproducing, dying, and nothing else. We know we are alive and know we will die. We also know we will suffer during our lives before suffering, slowly or quickly, as we draw near to death. This is the knowledge we enjoy as the most intelligent organisms to gush from the womb of nature. And being so, we feel shortchanged if there is nothing else for us than to survive, reproduce, and die. We want there to be more to it than that, or to think there is. This is the tragedy. Consciousness has forced us into the paradoxical position of striving to be unselfish of what we are, hunks of spoiling flesh on disintegrating bones. Non-human occupants of this planet are unaware of death, but we are susceptible to startling and dreadful thoughts, and we need some fabulous illusions to take our minds off them. For us, then, life is a confidence trick we must run on ourselves, hoping we do not catch on to any monkey business that would leave us stripped of our defense mechanisms and standing stark naked before the silent, staring void. To end this self-deception, to free our species of the paradoxical imperative to be and not to be conscious, our backs breaking by degrees upon a wheel of lies, we must cease reproducing. Nothing less will do, per Zapfa, although in The Last Messiah, the character after whom the essay is named does all the talking about human extinction. Elsewhere, Zapfa speaks for himself on the subject. The sooner humanity dares to harmonize itself with its biological predicament, the better. And this means to willingly withdraw in contempt for its worldly terms, just as the heat-craving species went extinct when temperatures dropped. To us, it is the moral climate of the cosmos that is intolerable, and a two-child policy could make our discontinuance a pain-free one. Yet instead we are expanding and succeeding everywhere, as necessity has taught us to mutilate the formula in our hearts. Perhaps the most unreasonable effect of such invigorating vulgarization is the doctrine that the individual has a duty to suffer nameless agony and a terrible death if this saves or benefits the rest of his group. Anyone who declines is subjected to doom and death, instead of revulsion being directed at the world order engendering of the situation. To any independent observer, this plainly is to juxtapose incommensurable things. No future triumph or metamorphosis can justify the pitiful blighting of a human being against his will. It is upon a pavement of battered destinies that the survivors storm ahead toward new, bland sensations and mass deaths.